You touched on another thing too. You said when you first started with this hospital-based EMS system, they would have you guys staged. The SWAT teams didn't really have a medical component to it whatsoever. One of the things I've recently been making videos about is essentially some of the dangers that EMS faces. A lot of people don't realize um, how violent patients can actually become. And there's a lot of talk of using social workers instead of police officers and all that. And that's a whole separate conversation. But did you feel at any point when you were working as a medic for this hospital-based team and they would have you stage, did you feel like you were just kind of naked out in the open, like, oh my God, what am I doing right here? Well, how come none of us have any sort of protection, no training on this? What am I doing?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I've been in that law enforcement role. I've been on an entry team. I've held a rifle going through a door. Um, and I have never had my life threatened more than when I was on an ambulance staged. So we were in the front lines, we were doing our thing as a law enforcement officer, and I felt safer doing that than I did as a paramedic stage, to be completely honest. So that's not to say people need to be scared. It's not to say everybody's going to, die in EMS or anything like that, but I've had more guns pointed at me as a street paramedic than I have on SWAT teams. So there is a lot of danger in EMS. You are interacting with very vulnerable people. You're going into their residence. You are rolling up to relatively unknown scenes. And what dispatch tells you you're going to isn't ever what you're actually going to. So, I remember being, sent to chest pain once, sitting in their car outside. I was like, great, that's not a call we need police on or anything like that. Well, come to find out he was having chest pain because he had 3 bullet holes in his chest. So yeah, that's chest pain, but it's not cardiac pain. And now you're on this scene where you've got somebody that shot this guy running around, So I guess the short answer is yes. There is a lot of danger to EMS. There's a lot of danger to basically any public safety group, but you have to be prepared for that and understand what you're getting into.
Yeah, I agree. So I tell a lot of newer EMTs and medics, we have a lot of students that ride, that anytime you feel, and this is something I've said in videos publicly on YouTube, and I have actually gotten some pushback from people, that at any time, I don't care if you're in a house, if, like you were talking about, if you're in somebody's car or standing outside, if it turns to the point where you feel like, something bad is about to go down, I'm about to get hit, I'm about to get hurt. And I don't mean somebody's getting agitated and stuff like that. There's a very big difference. And if you're not aware enough, maybe that comes with experience to know the difference between the two. But if at any point you feel like, I got to get out of here, you get back in that truck and you get out of there. Maybe you getting out of there is just getting back in the truck, but you need to look out for yourself first, because you can't help anybody if you're out of commission.
Yeah. So I agree completely with that, is that you have to know when it's time to just leave and be done. And you're going to come back once the scene's secure. You're going to get help for that person, but that might not be right then. And I think it's this big give and take. I think we do a disservice to people saying that like the scene's always going to be safe and that the scene has to be safe for us to enter. There's an inherent risk to being a paramedic. There's an inherent risk to being a firefighter, and we have to be able to accept some of those risks. But that doesn't mean being silly. That doesn't mean doing stupid things and, trying to restrain the 400-pound patient that's trying to pound you into the floor. That doesn't mean, trying to disarm somebody or doing anything like that. And that comes with experience. And that's why you need mentors in this, is because you have to understand when it's time to just back up.
For sure. For sure. And like you said, that's something that eventually will come with experience. And the other thing that I find frustrating about that is especially in today's day and age where everybody has a camera and everybody's watching, a lot of people, and this is partly why I started the channel, is, you can go on YouTube and you can watch somebody give a breakdown of, there's a million people out there giving breakdowns of what happened in a police scene. And then you get I call them YouTube attorneys, everybody that has all their legal experience that tells you about, well, technically this is what happened and that's what happened. But there's nobody explaining, hey, here on an EMS scene, this is what happens. And
Yep.
What kind of triggered this for me is we had a house fire maybe a couple months ago at this point. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was probably 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. It was still dark out. This house was rolling by the time we rolled up. But as I'm sure you know exactly what I'm talking about, our shift officer got in the command vehicle and he was out first. And as he pulled up, he said there were people just pounding on his window, screaming at him to get the fire department going. And I get it. People are scared. People are nervous. People are amped up. But a lot of people don't understand what he's doing there for those first 1 or 2 minutes before the engine shows up. He's telling us exactly what's going on. He's doing his 360. He's letting us know all this kind of stuff. So it's good that there's people like you out there that are explaining to other new medics, like, hey, if you feel like it's an unsafe area, you got to get out of there. And people are going to yell at you. People are going to say you should never do that, but you need to look out for yourself first, and you need to look out for your safety. So I'm glad you said that too.
Yeah, the court of public opinion is brutal. And context means everything. And understanding mindsets and training is another big thing, because it's going to look really bad when you back out of a scene when somebody's experiencing a medical emergency. They're going to see that, well, why are you doing that? This is my dad. He's not mean. Well, no, he's not mean usually. This isn't him. He's got a massive brain bleed. That's a medical emergency, but that brain bleed's making him aggressive. That brain bleed is making him physically try to assault us or reach for weapons or do whatever. So, you have to be mindful of that perception, and you have to take steps to mitigate that, in my opinion. The days of just kind of stone-faced getting in your truck and driving away are kind of over. Like, we do have to explain ourselves to a certain extent, so long as that it's not putting us in danger, because that video goes on YouTube. And I mean, that can end careers, even if you're completely exonerated from whatever happened, even if you're completely in the right, that can really affect you. So you have to be really careful. Not to say that's happening a ton, and
Right.
Honestly, like, you'll go, potentially years without having an incident or having to back out of a scene. To this day, I don't think I've ever really had to leave a patient once I initiated care. I've had to grab patients and go a little bit faster than I normally would to the ambulance and drive away. But, I personally have not had to, physically move and leave without somebody else.
Do you think medic schools could do a better job preparing people? Because outside of experience, I don't know how else you would learn the signs of knowing what to look for. Because I remember when I was in medic school, they rarely, if ever, talked about it, except for the just proverbial BSI, gloves on, scene safe, that you have to say it, everything. And at that point, it meant nothing, because that's just, everybody just said it again and again and again. The only person I ever met was my original EMT basic instructor. Did some sort, and this was not part of the curriculum. He just said, hey, I want to do this for you guys. He did some sort of self-defense type of class. But I've never heard anybody else talk about this, but it's an increasing problem.
Yeah. So, medic schools can do a better job at a lot of things. And, I'm always a proponent for more education and stuff. And, these schools are doing what they can, but I think there's a major revamp in curriculum in general to make it more realistic to what we're facing, because these threats, like, everybody knows to turn around and walk away when some dude with a shotgun approaches you at the door. That's a pretty obvious thing, but really the identifiers of an unsafe scene are much more subtle. It's multi-residence house that has had a lot of police calls to it, where you've got somebody sleeping in the basement. It's the middle of the night. Now you're talking to their mom. They come up and see a stranger. It's the person that's just starting to get amped up, that's starting to repeat themselves and get a little bit more agitated, that things are getting worse. It's the house you walk in with the samurai sword on the wall and it's kind of in arm's reach, and, things like that. It's a way more subtle, and it's not like, I've never just been approached by somebody that was just violent like that. Like, it's never been like I walk up and now I've got a gun in my face. It's always been, if I've ever been threatened on a scene, it's always been, a build to that. And you look at it through the retrospectoscope and you're like, yeah, I really should have seen this coming. This was the warning sign. This was the warning sign. And this is, all the YouTube lawyers that are going to, pick it apart and take 20 minutes to say what you should have done in a situation that took, seconds to develop. So, realistic training. And I think that goes to, another aspect of that. And the other thing that paramedic schools have to do better is training you for real world medical scenarios too. Like, you learn all the really serious things. You learn all the really big life threats, cardiac arrests and airway control and things, but they don't prepare you for the amount of mundane things you see every day. I got out of paramedic school. I didn't even know how to clean a wound. I knew how to pack a wound. I knew how to put a tourniquet on, but nobody ever taught me, like, hey, this is, how you would use hydrogen peroxide. This is how you'd wipe the wound down, like things like that. So long story short, paramedic schools need to do a better job in preparing us as a profession for the real world.
If you like this video, you can watch the entire conversation by clicking right here. Also, if you found this useful or helpful in any way, give this video a like, consider subscribing to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next video.